Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Dolphins Brawl. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum, who is all decked out in our wool cap again. Is it too cold to switch to another hat, man?
Still is in Iowa. Actually, it's about 20 degrees here, but it's due to be 3 degrees, I think, on Thursday. So
you still got that's pretty much, again, that's basically like ice chill, Floridians gonna go to die kind of weather.
Yeah, anybody from South Florida would not be happy here.
No.
Definitely.
We got a like Eskimo parka type thing. That's what we need. It's just like, and yet
cold weather.
And still, we still probably drink like some iced something or other.
Yeah, like your cocktails.
Yeah.
South Florida, South Beach.
Yeah, man. So, got a lot to talk about. A lot of news on the college football front, and I don't even have to say any more about that before everybody knows where this is going. So we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. All right. So once again, we do have our sponsor Fanatics. So if you want to get yourself some really cool merch, then you can just go right on there, find yourself a nice little deal, see what you can find, see what you like, and yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Find yourself some really cool merch. Okay, back to the show. So, Miami Dolphins and what is going to affect them in the offseason. So, point of order, we're going to have to talk about Tua Tagovailoa because we just are. There was a CAT scan recently that came out that basically showed that his hip is, quote-unquote, just about as good as it possibly could be. So, he's supposedly scheduled to be throwing very soon. He'll be at the combine. I don't know ultimately what he will end up doing at the combine. There are plenty of reports out there, but he will be in attendance in some way, shape, or form. So he's going to have an opportunity to talk to football teams all over again, like he hasn't already. But anyway, and now, basically, this really puts an effect on this whole situation because everything that we had been talking about was basically precedented on the idea that Tua's hip was not going to be healthy. But the more that we hear that he's going to be fine, he's ahead of schedule, he's doing well, it just kind of puts this whole different look on what's going to happen with the Dolphins part of it, because if teams hear enough good stuff about it, and they have an independent doctor look at things and be like, yeah, this is true, his hip is pretty much good to go, then it's going to have an impact on what the Dolphins do in the draft if the plan really is to go and grab Tua. So, I'll go ahead and give my opinion on this in a moment, but I'm first going to hand it over to you, my friend, and hear what your thoughts are. Has your opinion on the whole Tua situation changed at all given the recent news?
No, I really anticipated that being the news. You got to think of who's announcing that news, and this is the physician that's treating Tua or looking at the scan with him. So I think for a physician to come out and say everything seems to be healing as well as it could, that's pretty meaningless. Doesn't mean that he's not healing. I anticipate his hip will heal. It's not like his hip's not going to be functional. I think the bigger concerns that you're not going to be able to answer are what are the complications that come with the injury? Is he going to have pain and inflammation in the hip? This is a different injury, but it was a hip injury. Do you remember with Pouncey, they had to his last year here almost shut him down during practice, so they were trying to keep his hip from it not inflaming so he could play on it during the game week. And
yeah, he had issues with both hips. It was bad.
And I just. If you have pain and inflammation and he's coming in as a rookie, are they going to have to limit his workload because of that? That would be one concern I would have. Is there going to be any degenerative type problems with the joints in that hip, which would potentially decrease how long he could play for? And is it going to limit his physical ability? Is he going to be able to run as fast, cut the same, those sorts of things? And I don't anticipate you'll see that at the combine. And I don't think anybody's worried about Tua throwing the football. He has a strong arm. He threw a beautiful ball in college. The real question is what happens when Tua gets tackled by a 300-pound defensive lineman? What happens when he has to put his foot in the ground and plant and move around? And that's the real big question, I think, is what kind of mobility is he going to have? And I don't think you're going to see Tua running a 40 or doing any kind of agility drills at the combine. So I personally, it's news to report, but I don't think it's really changed. Either you're comfortable taking the risk that he's going to recover, or you're not. I don't think there's anything going to change from here to the combine, other than there hasn't been any unexpected complications arise as of right now in his rehab.
Well, the reason I feel like it's different for me only is because I honestly expected that we would hear that the hip is doing well and that it's as good as it could be or whatever. And believe me, Tua's camp is doing a remarkable push job. They are slamming it into everybody's heads just how much the Dolphins love them, how much they've talked with the Dolphins. Even Tua himself is adding to that by saying how much he loves Miami and how he's like, get ready because here I come and all that stuff. And he's just hyping everybody up to the point where it's like, well, if they don't draft Tua now, then it's like, what's going to happen after that? But the fact that there was always that lingering doubt that says, well, what happens if the report had been, well, I mean, Tua's on schedule, but it's nothing crazy, right? He's like, it was expected that he was not going to be able to play at all. But the way that things are coming out, it's almost like, well, maybe Tua has a chance to play like the later half of 2020.
Oh, I think it would be physically possible, but I don't think it's going to be in his best interest to do so.
Oh, I doubt it. Yeah, that's what I was saying is that before it was like there was no way. Like he had to sit, period. Like he physically wouldn't have been able to do it. And now all of a sudden that's changing, which means that if his recovery is going that well, then other teams are going to be, let's say, more willing to make that jump to try and grab him.
Oh, I mean, there's, like I said, that there's going to be some teams that are willing to take the risk for his potential. There's going to be teams that the risk is just not worth it. I still keep circling around. You got to look at a team-by-team situation and who is in a position from a head coaching standpoint where they can take that risk. And I still don't see many teams. And I think the reason Tua and they're selling Miami so hard is the Tua camp really needs Miami to take Tua, because I don't know that anybody else is going to take him early on. Because I look at, and with me, Lewis, I keep saying I think the Chargers are making a really hard push for Tom Brady. If the Chargers do get Tom Brady, would they be still interested in Tua? Yeah. Are they going to trade up for him, though? I mean, if you're going to bring in a 42-year-old quarterback for a team that's got some pieces, you're going to build around him to try to win right now. You're not going to give up more draft capital to move ahead of Miami, and you're probably not even going to take Tua at number 6 overall versus maybe one of the top offensive linemen in the draft. The Panthers absolutely might be interested in Tua, but you got to wonder, where's Justin Herbert going to go? Because he's healthy. If you're the Chargers and Anthony Lynn, you've got to win now. I think for the Panthers, they have a little bit more of a window, but what's happening with Cam Newton is going to be the question before they even consider Tua. And if Cam Newton's looking healthy, or they're feeling like he's going to be able to play, I don't know how eager the Panthers are to use the 7th overall pick on Tua, knowing, again, he's probably only playing if you're out of the playoff race. And so I've been preaching this, and I know I'm maybe even in the minority, but I really think it's a huge mistake to think you have to trade up for Tua right now based on any medical report. I just don't see it.
All right.
A team doing.
Okay, so in your opinion, if the whole idea is that it's a mistake to draft Tua and go up, or should I say a mistake to trade up to get Tua, in your mind, what would the draft order be then? Like, who goes first?
Well, if you want, let me give you my top 5 or 6 picks here. What I see going on right now, Lewis. I think the Cincinnati Bengals want to trade out at number 1 pretty bad. I think the reason is Joe Burrow is the number 1 rated quarterback, but the reality is with quarterbacks, it comes down to a flip of the coin. I personally don't think Joe Burrow is any more likely to be better than Justin Herbert or vice versa. I know Burrow had a really successful college year, but that's just how it goes in the NFL. I mean, you look at the draft that Tannehill went in when you had Andrew Luck and RG3 and all those guys, and the best quarterback ended up being Russell Wilson in the 2nd round. It's just very difficult to judge quarterbacks. And you kind of look at it in 2 ways. Is the quarterback smart, efficient, accurate? When I look at Joe Burrow, I look at, Yeah, like you look what Ryan Tannehill did with the Titans. If you put a good team around Joe Burrow, he could be a successful NFL quarterback. But you're not talking about a quarterback that has an arm like Patrick Mahomes or running ability like Lamar Jackson. You'd have to put a team around him. I think Justin Herbert might be rated by several teams higher than Joe Burrow just because he's bigger and has a bigger arm and he can make throws that are maybe a little bit harder to defend than the throws Joe Burrow can make for a corner. I'm not saying that Herbert's going to go number one, but I think for those reasons, I don't think I think the Bengals want to get out of number one. I also think the Redskins really want to get out of number two. Now, I know Chase Young is by far and away the most talented player in the draft. He's probably maybe a generational defensive end for you, but it is not a need at all for the Redskins. Like if you look at the Redskins' needs on their team, they don't need another talented defensive lineman. They need a lot of other things. So those two picks are going to be interesting in regards to the Dolphins because I really think if the Dolphins want Burrow, if they want to give up one of their number one picks, I think they can go get him. I think the Bengals can easily drop down to 5 and get a very good player. Or the Dolphins can move up to 2 and make a deal with the Redskins, and the Redskins can fall down to 5 and get a very good player. And then the Bengals may be willing to deal with Miami for Chase Young because I think that's a player the Bengals would really like to take. And I'm still not convinced they're not going to take Chase Young anyway because Joe Burrow's been wishy-washy about wanting to go to Cincinnati. I don't think Joe Burrow's going to help you at all in the division with the Ravens and Steelers and Browns right now without anything around him. To me, it looks like you're setting yourself up for a few losing seasons before you can even get the help he needs. Whereas Chase Young's, he's an Ohio State player. He's really popular within the state, and he's an instant impact player. And so I think the Bengals kind of in that catch-22 where you're expected to take Joe Burrow, but I don't think they really want to. And so I think those two picks are really up in the air for trade right now if Miami wants to move up. I don't think the Lions are going to be easy to deal with. I think everybody's saying the Lions, but the Lions really need corners. And so be very astute at watching the Lions at free agency because in this draft, Jeff Okudah, the corner from Ohio State, is by far and away the top corner. Some people have even compared him to Jalen Ramsey. That is the player the Lions need. And so he's projected to be a top 5 pick. I don't think the Lions are going to be very eager to move down right now because Matt Patricia cannot afford to have a losing season right now. He's absolutely coming in this season on the bubble. And the Lions trading down and not grabbing that top corner right now puts them in a more difficult position to win unless they feel comfortable at filling that positional need in free agency. And so I think the Lions are going to stay and pick him number 3 overall. Then you get into the Giants, and they're a little more difficult team to read because I think the Giants probably want to get an offensive lineman, and they can do that dropping down a few spots. And so those 3 teams, the Bengals, the Redskins, and the Giants, I think are the teams that are going to be open to talking to the Dolphins if they want to move up. So that brings you back around to the question, do you need to move up for Tua? And that's where I'm kind of saying I don't see any other team than the Panthers that would be willing to go move up on Tua. And I still don't see it based on his medical. I really think you're going to see Burrow go. I think you're going to see Herbert go on most teams' boards before Tua, simply because those are the only 2 quarterbacks in this draft I think you could potentially start on the opening day of the season. And if you are picking up a player you can't play on the opening day of the season, I just don't think there's any other teams out there right now that are going to be willing to take Tua to do that. So that's kind of in a nutshell where I think. Now, when you look at the Dolphins, I think, if they want to draft Tua, that's fine at 5. But I think with what's in this draft, I think a lot of people have been raving about Derek Brown, the defensive tackle from Auburn. He dominated at this. I mean, when anybody shows up at the Senior Bowl and they dominate at the Senior Bowl, that's a top 5 pick because you're looking at some of the top players in the country. And when you dominate the top players in the country, that's where your guys that have the all-pro potential show up. And so I'm hearing a lot of people compare Derek Brown to Ndamukong Suh in terms of talent at the defensive tackle standpoint. And so you throw in, a guy that might be comparable to Ndamukong Suh. You throw in a guy that may be comparable to Jalen Ramsey. Then you also have Isaiah Simmons in there, who's unbelievable in terms of being able to cover as a linebacker, which you need to do in today's NFL. And those three players are going to be really hard to not take if you're up there, if you're those teams, or if you're the Dolphins. And so I think this Tua thing is just out of control on Twitter. I think people are so, they think he's the answer to everything. And I think you have to step back and say Tua is no different than any other quarterback taken in the draft. You're maybe 1 in 4 of them are even going to be able to handle starting in the NFL. And it's much, much more rare where you get one that's a franchise guy. So I really don't think anybody's moving up to take Tua. And I think Miami is 50-50 if they're going to take Tua right now. I'm just not sure if that's where their frame of mind is right now with the other talented players.
And that was the second question I was about to ask, is that now that you said whether they should, I was going to ask you whether you think they will or not.
I think it's hard to not take Tua at 5. I think
I meant trade up.
Oh, trade up? No, I do not think Miami's going to trade up. I think if Miami's going to go up, they're going after Burrow. That's the only reason they would go up. There's just too much talent at 5. And that's why I think everybody other than the Lions, any 3 of those teams are going to be very interested to move down with the Dolphins. It will take quite a bit less than anybody else because of that plateau of those 3 defensive players I just talked about. I think if you want an offensive lineman, you can probably fall back almost back to 10 even, and there's 3 or 4 really good linemen in this draft that you could start on opening day. And so that's a little easier to fall back on. But if you want one of those blue chip guys, Miami's ideal because you can drop to 5 and still get a very good football player, as well as a pick from Miami. But I just don't see them going up after anybody other than Burrow. I really don't. It'd be surprising.
It's very easy, I feel, and this is just my thoughts here, is that it's very easy to brush off everything as just smoke and everything. And I know it's February. We shouldn't be talking about something that's going to happen in April, like all the way in February. Really, there's no way to predict anything that's going to happen. There's no way to know exactly who they're really talking to, because so far we've heard reports that the Dolphins and the Bengals are talking about trading, that we've heard the Redskins, we've heard the Lions, we've heard literally everybody so far talking to the Dolphins about trading up, down, and all around. And so when you have all those kind of conflicting reports, it's very easy to say, oh, well, it's just a bunch of bullcrap. There's no nothing here. It's a nothing burger. But yet at the same time, you just kind of feel like, remember who the team we're talking about is. And like the decisions that they've made in the past have been, shall we say, less than ideal. Like, we will never forget, and I know that EJ on our little group of friends here, you and me, Chad, he will never, ever, ever forgive the Dolphins front office for trading, I don't even remember what they were, but it was a buttload of picks for Rutgers Leonte Carew.
Yeah. I mean, those are mid picks, but they gave up a
still,
lot.
Though. Yeah, it's like they traded up. They gave a lot of picks to get this guy who is he even still in the league? I don't think he is.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. I mean, number 1 picks are not easy to get.
Right.
And they are gold on draft day. And unless you're talking about some of the ridiculously talented players that are never available, Patrick Mahomes is not up for trade. Aaron Rodgers is not up for trade. You take those guys out, and that is the number 1 thing people have that people want. And Miami has those picks. And so I'm telling you pretty confidently right now, if Miami wants to go up to number 1 overall with the Bengals, their 5th and 18 round pick and maybe another 2nd or 3rd rounder will get that done. The Bengals, I think, would much rather pick 5th overall, maybe take Justin Herbert, and then have that 18th overall pick to get, whatever other, player they need to play right away for them. The question is do you go up? And this comes back to the quarterback question. And if you're asking, so I'm telling you what I think will happen, Lewis. If you're asking what I would do, I would take Tua, or I would trade back and take Jordan Love. Those are the 2 things I would do. And the reason why is you just are not able. There's only 2 quarterbacks in the last 2 or 3 decades that I've watched get drafted where I felt like those are going to be quarterbacks you know are going to be Pro Bowl level quarterbacks. That was Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. You knew how special they were coming out of college. You saw the arm velocity and what they had from a talent standpoint, and how prepared they were for the NFL. I've never seen a quarterback since that's been drafted anywhere where I said that guy is clearly going to be a top NFL quarterback. And the reason for that is you can look at all the intangibles, like what their leadership qualities are. You can have them take all these different tests to see how good they are at grasping and reading defenses. You can test all the metrics at the combine. But what you absolutely cannot test is the post-snap recognition. And the NFL, I mean, you've seen a lot of practices, Lewis, and you're fortunate because I've watched high school football and college football and the NFL. And if you are physically there on the sidelines, it's really impressive to see it, how fast the NFL goes, like how fast the corners are, how fast the linebackers are, and how quickly things move. And the reality is some quarterbacks just cannot get that ball in their hands and adjust fast enough, whether it's sliding around in the pocket or realizing that there was a change in coverage, that a blind blocker is blitzing, and how to pick that up and where to go with the ball and all those things that go into it. And, and the guys that are good at it, like Brady's and Manning's and those guys, they're around forever because it's just so hard to get guys that have that post-snap recognition. So when I look at quarterbacks, you have a guy where you hear the term an NFL arm. And when I look at Joe Burrow, I see a guy that has an NFL arm. Another guy that has an NFL arm that's a pretty good athlete, Ryan Tannehill. I don't see any skill set that Joe Burrow has that Ryan Tannehill doesn't have. And you saw, again, if you put a good team around Ryan Tannehill, he can be successful, and Joe Burrow the same exact thing. When you have an NFL arm, that means you can make all the throws that you need to make so that the defense can't really cheat on you. So let's say if you struggle making that 15 to 20 yard out throw, like you have to put a little more air under the football to get the ball out there on target. Defenses pick up on that very quickly in the NFL. And so suddenly you've got a safety that can cheat over a little bit further, or a corner that can play a little bit further out of position so he's a little more able to jump over on a receiver or play the run or blitz, because they realize that quarterback just does not have the arm to make that throw. So when I say you have a quarterback that has an NFL arm, that means they can make all those throws so that you have to play honest defense on what their arms are. Then you get guys that are above that, and you don't see many of those. And that's like Patrick Mahomes, Dan Marino, Jay Cutler. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good quarterbacks, but they have special velocity on the football.
It can.
And those guys have such strong arms. Brett Favre was one, where now it's the opposite. Now you almost got to cheat over a little bit because he can throw that 15 yards on such a rope that if you give him space, they'll throw it on you all game long. So you have no choice but to almost put yourself a little bit more out of position because they're so talented. That I'm just starting to come to that reality that you can get Ryan Tannehills all over the place that are got an NFL arm and they can efficiently run an offense. But what you can't get easily are Dan Marino's, Patrick Mahomes, John Elway's, guys that have those really, really high-velocity arms that also have the post-snap recognition. And there's only two quarterbacks in this draft that I see that have the talent to be that above an average NFL quarterback in talent, where they have better arms, they throw better balls, and that's Tua and Jordan Love. And Jordan Love looks amazingly talented to me. He made a lot of mistakes at the college level, and he's nowhere near ready for the NFL. But at least in my mind, if you're going to draft a quarterback, why not draft one that has that kind of talent and hope that he is able to adjust to the NFL speed? Because I just have come to the reality, I don't think Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert are any more likely than the other one, or Tua or Jordan Love, at handling the speed of the game. You're either going to have that ability to do it or you're not. And that's where I start looking at what kind of arms do they have and what do they bring to the table. And, if you watch the film on Tua, assuming he's fully recovered, he throws a beautiful ball. He's left-handed. He's got everything you want in a quarterback to be exceptional. And so to me right now, if I'm the GM, if I'm Chris Greer, I'm not giving up first-round picks because they're too hard to get your hands on. We had to go through a season of hell to acquire all those picks, and we gave up a lot of talent to acquire all those picks. So I don't want to give up a bunch of picks just to trade up to get a quarterback, because if that quarterback busts, we may be a losing team for the next 5 or 6 years because we gave away all those assets we gained to build the team around. So my two choices are I'm taking Tua at 5. I'm going to just say, you know what, he may make it back or he may not. But just because if he does make it back, I really love his talent level. I think he's quite a bit more talented than Joe Burrow personally. People might disagree with me, but I think Tua is a lot more talented than Joe Burrow when healthy. And if I can't get Tua at 5, if somebody jumps up and takes him on me, I'm going to entertain trading back maybe up to 5, 6 spots, maybe taking the best offensive lineman on the board or taking Jordan Love. And I'll let Jordan Love sit behind Rosen and Fitzpatrick for a year or two and hope that Chan Gailey can develop him to be an NFL quarterback because he has all the tools. I'm not taking Burrow or Herbert. That's what I'm not doing.
All right, so you're saying you're going to trade back. Now, if you trade back to 10, what's the return you're looking for? Like another first rounder?
Well, if you're at 5, you're going to have somebody like a Derek Brown on the board or an Isaiah Simmons on the board, Justin Herbert on the board. And so I think you could have a team, let me just look down the list here. Let's see. Probably the most likely candidate would be the Indianapolis Colts. I could see the Colts wanting to come up, and they're at 13. So I'd consider dropping back to 13, possibly, if they really wanted to move up. If I don't have a good trade offer and Tua's gone, I'm just going to take the best player available. So I might draft Derek Brown, and that's not so bad. I'm going to take a guy that people are comparing to Ndamukong Suh and put him right beside Christian Wilkins. Or if Jeff Okuda's there, I'm going to take him and put him opposite of Xavier Howard. If Isaiah Simmons there, I'm just going to throw him in on my linebacking core with Baker, McMillan, and all those guys. You immediately bring in a really good player that's Pro Bowl caliber to add to your team. And then I might consider moving up from 18 if I want to maybe make a run at Jordan Love. That's what I want to get. This is what I think, not what I think is going to happen necessarily. This is what I personally would do if I'm the Dolphins because, after watching the Super Bowl and watching football for all these years, it just almost always is Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees. When you get one of those elite quarterbacks, that is how you put together a team that wins year after year after year. And isn't it interesting how it's so often it's the same teams in the playoffs with all the moves you see in the offseason? It's always those top quarterbacks that are competing for division titles and Super Bowl titles. And so I think you agree with me on this one, Lewis. If you do anything, you just keep getting quarterbacks until you get the one that's just elite. Until you get the next Marino, you keep going. I don't think you can just settle on getting the next Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is a good quarterback, but he can't do the things that Patrick Mahomes can do. And I want to go after a quarterback that can do those things. And it doesn't have to be the rocket arm. I really wish we would have went and got Lamar Jackson because he is elite at running the football, and he makes that offense very difficult to stop. And I want a quarterback like that that's got some special talent, I guess, more than just has a really good college resume and has an NFL arm, but not like a crazy cannon for an arm and isn't really, really fast running.
No, I agree with you on that front. And, quite frankly, the way you broke it down to who the first 5 picks would be, that's pretty much what every single mock draft nowadays seems to have, is that either Burrow is going number 1, or maybe you could say Herbert goes number 1, depending on what the team thinks, or they trade out of it. But either way, if they trade out of it, is to get a quarterback, and then Chase Young goes number 2, and then another quarterback goes 3. We don't know who that would be. It's like one of the 3. And then number 4 is Okuda, and then number 5 is whatever quarterback would fall to Miami. That's pretty much the consensus for every single mock draft that's out there nowadays, is that those players, those teams.
It does. And you got to just look at the team's situations and their needs. And,
right.
I really like where the Dolphins are, and I would hate being the Bengals right now because you got your second-year head coach and your GMs, and the whole world's looking at you and saying, you got to take Joe Burrow. He just had, the best year a college quarterback's ever had in history of the NCAA. How do you not take Joe Burrow? And I look at the Bengals and I'm just like, how much better is Joe Burrow than Andy Dalton? I mean, he's probably not as good as Andy Dalton right now. He has potential to be a really good quarterback, but is he going to walk into the locker room and start an opening day and be better than Andy Dalton? And the answer is probably no, not as a rookie. Joe Burrow doesn't have a rocket arm. He's got an NFL arm. Don't get me wrong. He can make the throws, but you're not talking about a guy that has an exceptional
He
arm.
doesn't have an instant advantage, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he doesn't have an instant advantage. He's an all around good prospect as a quarterback, but he may struggle picking up recognition. I mean, he probably doesn't have. He's a little bit better athlete, I would say, but he probably doesn't have a lot more skill set than Josh Rosen has. You just don't know what you're getting. And so the Bengals, I mean, you're in that situation where you're a popular opinion because if you pass on Joe Burrow and Joe Burrow then gets drafted wherever, let's say the Dolphins pick him, and Joe Burrow becomes the next Tom Brady, you're all fired like in the next few years because that's all everybody's going to ever talk about is, oh my God, the Bengals gave up and passed on the best quarterback in the last decade or something like that. But I don't know that that's what they really want to do. I think they would love to get out of there and not have to make that decision. And again, same thing with the Redskins. Chase Young's a great player, but he's not going to help them that much because they already have some pretty good defensive linemen. It's just not what their need is. And so do you take the best, athlete and have a really good defensive line but not have anything else? If you're the Redskins, I don't think you really want to do that. What you want to do is get good value for that pick and get out of there. And so for me, the Dolphins are sitting there with all the cards. They've got those extra number one picks. They're the only team really that has that surplus of picks that they're going to want to use to move up from 5. Because when you start to back down the draft and you start thinking, well, what about the Saints? They want Tua. I'm like, well, hell yeah, the Saints want Tua. So do the Patriots. But they have to come from the back end of the draft. And so you're giving up multiple number one picks over the next years to get up there. And nobody really wants to do that, particularly for a player that has a health concern. So I think Miami can deal with the Giants. I think they can deal with the Redskins, and they can deal with the Bengals. They can easily give up their 18th pick and have any one of those slots they want because those teams want out of there. And again, I don't think the Lions are going to move at all because Jeff Okudah is an elite corner, and I think he's the only obvious elite corner in this draft. Then they really need that player, and so it's a really good fit. And so he's going to be there at 3. He's not going 1 or 2. I can't see that happening. And so I think the Lions aren't going to want to deal. I think they're going to – Matt Patricia is going to say, if I don't win this season, I'm gone. Tua is not going to help me. I'll be much better off to keep Matt Stafford and try to get some good players around him right away and try to win right now. And that Okudah gives the Lions the best possible player to add to improve their team. So they're going to take him. So, again, for all the Dolphins fans out there, to me, here's how it is. If you're willing to give up the 18th round pick in this draft, you have Tua or you have Burrow if you want them. That's really what I believe.
And I'm honestly right there with you. I've been against the whole trade-up thing from the very beginning because I don't like... Just because you have picks to bargain with, I don't feel like you should necessarily, especially not the early ones, because this is one hell of a loaded draft. The way through round 3, there are players who can be instant day 1 starters, and it's like if anything, if you want to move up for stuff, then. If anything, you should try to move down and get maybe a few extra picks here and there, maybe future picks. Like maybe if you don't want to have a pick for now, you can get a pick for later down the line.
Oh yeah, and I think you just got to take that risk if you're the Dolphins because I think Tua will be there at 5. Maybe somebody will decide they're going to make the run at him, but if you give up that 18th round pick, that's where you're getting a guy around like AJ Epineza from Iowa. He's a really good defensive end, and the Dolphins need him.
And you would
right
know.
Now. Yeah, well, or another. I'm not saying him specifically. I'm just saying like the player you get at 18 is something the Dolphins really need right now. They need a lot of help on their offensive line. They need a lot of help on their defensive line. They need another corner. They need a safe. I mean, you can go on and on with all the things Miami needs to do to get competitive. And, with all the hell, I guess, we went through for this season by trading off to build all these assets, it feels like you're getting conned a little bit to move up, 2 or 3 slots in a draft that has so many talented players in it.
If I would, the only time I would think I would be willing to trade up at all is if it's from 18 to something else. I'm keeping number 5.
I'm with you on that. Like, let's say you don't get Tua at 5, and you really like Jordan Love. I mean, then I'm like, you know what? Trade off a second or third round pick and move up from 18 to 13 or something like that and get him. Don't mess around. I'm with you on that one. But giving up those number one picks, I'd be very, very cautious at doing that because those three picks could be opening day starters. If you do well, those could all be Pro Bowl players. And just think of the impact that has on the team immediately if our three number one picks are all Pro Bowl players.
And that's not even considering what happens in free agency first, because again, what the Dolphins do in free agency is going to have a direct effect on how they handle the draft. Because if you sign,
Yes.
I don't think he's going to get out of Jacksonville. I mean, I wrote an offseason plan for 5 Reasons Sports, and I was hoping against hope that maybe this would happen, but it doesn't look like Yannick Ngakoue is going to get away from Jacksonville. They're going to tag him. So,
No, I don't believe that
right.
will
But
happen.
if he had managed to slip free, and the Dolphins had signed him, then that makes the need for a pass rusher not quite as
Right.
necessary. So you would need to draft maybe a pass rusher in round 1, so that has an impact. Or if you do sign a Jack Conklin or an Anthony Costanza or something, I don't Costanzo, that's his name, Costanzo. Anyway, the Colts guy. So if you do sign him, then you don't need to put a premium pick on a left tackle, because there's a lot of good left tackles in this draft. And you can maybe get one in like round 2 with what's his name? Josh Jacobs, I think that's his name, or Prince Tega Wanahogo. I'm butchering all these names right now because I don't have
Well, it
it.
is, and the other aspect of the draft that's interesting is if you take Tua, you don't need a great left tackle, you need a great right
Right
tackle.
tackle, Conklin.
But I believe they'll chase the offensive lineman in free agency. But the other thing that's weird right now, Lewis, is I can't remember in quite a while where the quarterback situation is going to be very interesting this offseason.
That's the
Because
other thing.
there are some quarterbacks out there right now like you don't normally have available. And I'm not a huge Phillip Rivers fan, but you're talking about a very good quarterback throughout his career that's a free agent right now. You can sign him right now. Well, at least in March. They've already agreed to part ways. But, if you're a team right now that's pretty good and you just need to upgrade your quarterback position, you could do a lot worse than bringing in Phillip Rivers. Tom Brady's still out there, and I really don't think I'm in the minority, and I get blasted on Twitter by Patriots fans sometimes. But if Tom Brady was returning to the Patriots, he would just return to the Patriots and get it done right now. Tom Brady wants to take visits in free agency, and as I was saying earlier in the show, is I think the Chargers are going to chase Brady big time, and I've laid
You
out
called it
why.
last time.
Well, I did, and people are like, he's 42 years old. They're not going to pay him a ton of money. I'm like, it's not about as much where Brady's at physically right now. It's the market. I think the Chargers made a huge mistake, and I think the owner is starting to see that because you look at that market, and you've got the LA Rams who have been having some success the last few years. They've been to a Super Bowl. They've had some big time names there. And that is your traditional, so if you have a person that's lived in the Los Angeles area way back from the 70s and 80s, there you have like Jack Youngblood, Eric Dickerson, and so you've got that history of that being a Los Angeles team. And then you look at the most popular team by far in Los Angeles, and it's the Raiders. And you don't have to even look around much. There's a lot of people that aren't really even NFL fans that wear Raiders gear all the time, and they're a very popular team in Los Angeles. And I don't think they've lost that big a fan base going to Las Vegas. I think they're still very popular in Los Angeles. And so you've got those two NFL teams that you're competing with immediately for trying to sell jerseys and tickets. And that's not to mention the teams in the proximity, like the 49ers, who are just in the Super Bowl. And then you get the non-NFL teams you're competing with because people don't go buy 4 or 5 different jerseys for Christmas or birthdays. They get one. So you're competing with the Los Angeles Lakers. You're competing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. You're competing with the LA Clippers, the San Francisco Giants, UCLA, USC. It's a very, very tight market to try to gain market share and in fan base. And the Chargers have entered that market as kind of like the black sheep or the stepchild of that city right now because there is no real loyalty to the Chargers. They're kind of like an outcast right now. And so how do they do that? And so you look at NFL merchandising, And who was been the number one selling jersey for a long time and was still number 2 this year, Lewis?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. So if you're the Chargers right now, I'm looking at like, what can I do as the owner right now when I have a home game at the Rams Stadium to try to get people to come to watch it? And I can't think of anything
The
better
Chargers.
that you could do. The
Or
Chargers.
the Rams? Are the
No,
Chargers
it's the
using the
Rams.
Ram
It's the
Stadium?
Rams. I was saying it's the Rams Stadium because that's the truth. The
Okay, I
Chargers
wasn't
are
sure it was
playing
that. I
in the
wasn't sure what they were playing. Yeah.
Well, the only reason I say that is because the Rams own the stadium, and
Okay.
so there's only so many things you can do as the Chargers for people that attend that game not to see Rams stuff around
Gotcha.
because it's not their stadium.
Gotcha.
And so again, your fan base is coming to a stadium that's going to be marketing the other team in the area. Like I was saying, so the Los Angeles Chargers right now are desperate to try to increase their fan base because I think they lost a fairly big chunk of the San Diego fan base. I think a lot of those people are maybe now rooting for the 49ers or they're doing, something else because there was a lot of bitterness at the Chargers leaving San Diego, which they should have never done. So for that reason, I think they are rolling the red carpet out. I think there was some talk. This is just me reading the tea leaves. There was some talk from the Patriots about getting Tom Brady re-signed. And this Phillip Rivers thing that was going around the last couple of days, this happened 2 weeks ago. It was announced 2 weeks ago that the Chargers were not going to be re-signing Phillip Rivers. And why do you think that is, Lewis? Why would you do it right now?
I mean, I can only imagine that it's because they want to make a point that says that we are looking for a brand new quarterback, and they're making a push to say, hey, Tom, guess what? It's you that we want.
Right, because what you can't do right now is you can't talk to Tom Brady. That would be illegal by NFL. You can't talk to anybody till March or whatever that date is. Otherwise, you're getting tampering. And so the Chargers can't pick up the phone right now and say, hey, Tom, we want to offer you this. What the Chargers can do is say, hey, Tom, here's 100%. Phillip Rivers is gone. The door is wide open. This job's yours. And the reason the Chargers are doing that is they do not want Tom Brady signing with the Patriots right now. They want him waiting to free agency so he can come to meet with the Chargers, and they're going to offer him a lot of money to come here. And people laughed at me. I think they're going to offer him maybe even a 2 or 3 year deal to get him here because they are that aggressive right now, wanting a marquee name for people to come and watch. And Tom Brady is it. And then finally, this week, I don't know if you read this, Lewis, but the Chargers announced on social media, the Phillip Rivers thing, and Tom Brady liked it. So to me, there's a little bit of playing going on between Tom Brady. I don't, they're going to have to work out terms, but there is absolutely flirting going on between Tom Brady and the Los Angeles Chargers right now. And if that happens, that directly impacts the Dolphins on what they're doing with Tua because you pull the Chargers out of there now. There was a team right there that obviously wants a quarterback, and they want a big name. And so, but if the Chargers go and spend a bunch of money to get Tom Brady, they're not going to move up to get Tua. They're going to try to build around Tom Brady and get a winning season.
Makes sense to me. So much draft talk, and we're going to do this all again the next show probably too.
Well, it is, and I mentioned Phillip Rivers. He's going to get a home. He doesn't have one right now. I don't know who that's going to be. The grapevine right now is saying it's going to be Tampa Bay. And I think there's a very strong likelihood Tampa Bay would grab Phillip Rivers.
It just seems like it fits. I don't know why.
Yeah, it makes sense. He's in Florida now, and it does kind of make sense. I think the other name to really watch is Cam Newton. The owner came out this week and just said, I'll talk about Cam Newton when Cam Newton's healthy. And so it was basically in so many words it says if Cam Newton's healthy, then they'll probably keep him there. If he's not, they'll probably be looking for a quarterback. And, that makes sense to me. There's been a lot of people that are predicting the Bears are going to go after quarterback. And I don't think they're going to bail on Trubisky this soon, but there's a lot of people that are predicting the Bears are going after a quarterback yet.
The fans, I'll tell you what, are darn sick of Trubisky already. They've given up on him.
I agree. The fan base has, but oh my God, you were talking about people being frustrated about what we gave up for Leonte Carril, like what the Bears gave up to go get Trubisky.
Yeah, they gave up Mahomes.
In a draft that had Mahomes in it. I mean, my God.
And Deshaun Watson too, no?
Yeah, two there's two quarterbacks right now that have above the normal talent that are showing it right now. That both those teams look like they're going to be successful for a while because of those quarterbacks. But so I don't know what for sure. I think the Raiders. I don't think they're in love with Carr, but it's some of these teams are looking at other girls right now, but they're not. They're still sticking with their current girlfriend, but it wouldn't shock me if they dump one and jump to the other one.
The only free agent that we haven't talked about is Breeze. So are you convinced he goes back to New Orleans?
Breeze is not. I think Breeze and Sean Payton are very close, and I don't think there's any way in the world Breeze is going to retire or he's going to stay with the Saints. I'm convinced of that. I'm absolutely not. Tom Brady and his wife. I'm trying to remember how to say her name. You know how to say her name?
Giselle.
Okay. Thanks for that. They pulled their kids out of the school system they were in, and she may make more money than he makes, Lewis.
He does. She absolutely does. Yes,
and
she does.
So that makes things interesting. Like, what kind of business opportunities does she get living in Los Angeles versus living in Boston or anywhere else? And so that could get interesting on the aspect that a lot of people are like, what's Tom Brady going to do? And like anybody else that's married, she probably has a lot more say than people realize on what they're going to do. And I think that's something else the Chargers may learn. But anyway, I'm kind of like rambling about the different quarterbacks, but the point being is there's a lot of available quarterbacks right now in the league. I think,
and that's why it's not rambling, Chad. For real, all these things have a direct impact on what is going to happen with the Dolphins in the draft, because it's like you cannot picture who are the teams that we know for a fact need a quarterback. The Panthers, maybe. The Saints, maybe, assuming Breeze doesn't re-sign, because they also want to see about Bridgewater.
Saints are going to be interested in drafting one, I think. But, they have Hill as well, which, a lot of people have different opinions on where he's at. And I don't think quarterback's a high priority for the Saints right now. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they keep Teddy Bridgewater. If I were Teddy Bridgewater's agent, I would just say, just stay a backup, because his knees, that was such a severe injury. And he's right now probably one of the top 3 or 4 rated backup quarterbacks in the league. He can be that for the next decade if he just limits the amount of pounding his knees take. He just be the backup quarterback and make your money. I think if Teddy Bridgewater goes to a team and wants to be a starter right away, I do question how well is his body going to hold up physically, and he just doesn't have a lot of experience, and so he has a real possibility of having a rough half of the season and then really reducing his value to make dollars as a backup.
Right, but that somebody would sign him if that was the case, and that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that
I mean, he's a viable option is what you're
and that's what I'm saying, is that you cannot picture all of these QBs just suddenly not getting signed somewhere. Like, Phillip Rivers will be signed by somebody. Tom Brady will be signed by somebody. Bridgewater, Breeze will be signed by somebody. It's not a matter of if, it's who and when.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's what I'm saying, is that if you fill all the holes with the
second-tier quarterbacks right now, because you've got guys like Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, who were also former number 1 picks.
And they also will get signed by somebody, whether it's backups or something else. They will get signed. It's not like they're just going to stay on the free market forever. And Tannehill's going to go back to Tennessee, more than likely. So it's like...
And if he doesn't, he's going to get signed.
And again, if he doesn't, he's going to get signed. There's only so many teams that are looking for a quarterback, and with all these free agents out there, it's hard to picture all these teams needing to go up and get the best guy there is, especially if the goal is to make them play the first day. That leaves pretty much only the Bengals, and the Lions is also a maybe because Stafford is still there. And
I can see the logic of the Lions wanting a quarterback, but if Patricia cannot afford a rookie quarterback right now, if the Giants don't make the playoffs this year, I would say pretty likely he's being fired, and he knows that.
Right, and the Panthers are also a maybe. We don't know, because, again, there's a bunch of free agents. And even if they do sign one, if there's a guy who's available who's going to be like, we're in there now, they're going to take a hard look at him. There's no way they're not going to.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And it's easy. Every year there's quarterbacks moving around, but the quarterbacks available, this is different. I mean, you're talking about
It's star power. It's not long term, but it's star power.
I mean, you're talking about Tom Brady. Yes, he's 42, but you're talking about, without question, one of the top quarterbacks of all time. All time. This hasn't happened since Peyton Manning left the Colts, and
before that, Joe Montana. I said that the last show too. It was like when Joe Montana shook loose from San Francisco. It was like, oh my God, who's gonna get him?
And Joe Montana took the Chiefs to the playoffs. He didn't win the Super Bowl. He took the Chiefs to the playoffs. Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl with the Broncos after he left the Colts. There's no reason to think that if you put a good team around Tom Brady, he's not going to do pretty well. And so you've got a quarterback like that available. That's a once in a decade thing where guys like that are available to be signed. And then not only do you have Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers has made a lot of Pro Bowls. You're talking about a very good quarterback. If you're looking for somebody you want to feel comfortable starting on opening day, it's been a while since there's been somebody even the caliber of Phillip Rivers that's just a free agent available at the quarterback position. So, and again, the NFL is so driven to win now. And even like, if the Bengals do draft Burrow, he's not somebody that's real popular, but Andy Dalton is not a terrible quarterback. He's a lot better than the majority of quarterbacks in the bottom half of the league.
He's a decent stopgap, but I would still see a team drafting him, whoever signed him.
Oh, I don't think anybody's going to bring Andy Dalton in and say he's our guy. But my point being is, if the Bengals are going to draft Burrow, if you draft him number 1 overall, you're almost, you're going to have to play him. And so Andy Dalton's probably not going to stay in the Bengals, and he'll enter free agency, which again makes another quarterback. Is
Dalton a free agent, or are you talking about cutting him?
I think they can cut him without any salary cap implications, but he's not a free agent. Like he's not free, but I don't think the Bengals will keep him if they draft Burrow. Is the point I'm making. Maybe they will. I don't think they will. They just drafted a quarterback. Was it Finley? They drafted a year or two ago.
Yeah, that's a nothing burger. But anyway, they tried it. They tried it. It didn't work.
Did they though? I mean, he got to play 2 or 3 games.
It was more than that. They were screaming to get Dalton back in there after a few games.
Was not a lot different than what the Dolphins did with Rosen.
Yeah.
I mean,
but Finley lasted longer than Rosen did. Rosen got 3 games. Finley got at least 6. It feels like
neither one of them had much of a chance. That was the point I'm making, because they were playing on teams without superior talent around him with inexperience, and so clearly Andy Dalton and Ryan Fitzpatrick, with all their experience, do better with players that aren't as good around them as the younger guys do. But I'm not saying Finley's going to be a good quarterback. I'm saying that if you're the Bengals, it's hard to get rid of him and not have him be the backup versus paying Dalton. That was the point I was making.
Yeah. So, yeah, man. So, we've only got about 8 minutes left. We talked pretty much all draft all day. So, there are a few more things I feel like we should touch on just a little bit here. Sure. So, Xavier Howard's charges have been dropped, so we can make of that what we will, but I'm sure the NFL is going to suspend him anyway, but I think it's safe to say that Miami is not looking to move on from Howard for any time soon.
Yeah, in this case, I don't know. I'm okay with him getting suspended based on everything I saw. I didn't read anything in the report that suggested that Xavier Howard was actually beating his fiance. But clearly there was issues going on, and I think as the NFL and as the Dolphins, you kind of want to make a statement that we don't like even fringe stuff going on in domestic abuse. So I'm actually comfortable with Xavier Howard getting suspended for a game or two, just as
I'd be even good with 4 or even more than that. The more focal point is that, because everybody was saying he did a thing, cut him. End it.
No,
goodbye.
No.
I don't think that's happening.
Not knowing the situation, knowing that he wasn't actually physically hitting her, I don't want to be too severe with him, because we don't know. It's easy to point fingers but not know all the specifics. But I do think he might get disciplined a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be extended, and he may not, because again, kind of his report came out. This is the thing that's been frustrating me about Xavier Howard that I've seen. Both, people I know and don't know, is they keep throwing him in this grouping with Ray Rice and who's Walton. The guy on the Chiefs, Mark Walton and
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill, and these are guys that physically punched pregnant women, and you saw what Ray Rice did to the girl in the elevator. And I don't think that's fair to Xavier Howard to group him with those guys because that's not what I read him doing. Not that I am justified. I use an example of Jarvis Landry got investigated by the NFL just because he wasn't allowing his ex-girlfriend into his house. And so she called the cops and charged him just because he wouldn't move from the doorway. And so to me, that's not abuse, and it got dropped. And so maybe Xavier Howard somewhere in that gray in there. I think for me, the point was like, look, this is no tolerance. I understand you didn't hit her, but anything going forward.
He got physical with her. Like, regardless of what the physicality is, he did get physical with her.
So I kind of like the idea, this is being a big Dolphins fan. I like the idea that maybe he does need to get suspended for a game or two just as an eye-opener that, there is no tolerance for this. You need to go the other direction now and stay completely away from those circumstances or you're going to be gone. That's the message you're sending. But that's enough. I don't think he needs to be harsh or punished without knowing any more specifics and him having no history of that. Because I'm on license. I don't think Tyreek Hill should be allowed to play in the NFL, and I don't think Mark Walton should be allowed to play in the NFL for the things that they've done. I absolutely was agreeable with Ray Rice never getting to play in the NFL again because those things they did, I think they lost that privilege of being able to play in the NFL. But I don't believe Xavier Howard did something that should make him lose the privilege of playing in the NFL. I'm hoping it's one of those things that's life-changing for him on waking up on you can't be physical like that with women. You've got to find a better way to deal with their relationship issues.
Can I just, at the risk of sounding controversial, I'm just going to go ahead and make a comment here. Any NFL player has a very, very dangerous game to play when there are significant others involved. Because, and this is one of those things that I'm going to say is partially culture driven.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't matter whether you did anything or not. If someone says you did something, you're in trouble. Like, I remember there's some truth there. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, there was a story when Reuben Foster came out of the draft that some girl that Foster claimed never to have met before in his life, and it turned out to be true, claimed that he had either assaulted or molested her or something like that, and he got nailed for doing nothing. It was just his name was attached to it. And it did turn out to be a fake news story.
Right. And that happens. I think, you have to deal with that. But to me, if you are in the NFL and you're going to make millions of dollars like the athletes do, that is part of your job. And the reality is, if you're an NFL player, this is true of any high-profile athlete, whether you're a baseball player, basketball player, whatever. If you're going to be high-profile like that or a movie star, you're going to have to accept it's not a good idea to be out at clubs. It's not a good idea to maybe be in relationships that are volatile. And the reason is because you can't afford to have that kind of publicity around your name because it impacts you, it impacts your team, because it's under a microscope if you get charged with stuff like that. And not always, I'm sure there are people who completely make things up that aren't true, but usually the problems come from them being in situations they shouldn't have been in the first place that are avoidable. If you get in a fight at a bar, maybe you didn't start it, maybe it wasn't your fault, but but what are you doing there? Because you just being there and being high profile is increasing the chance that somebody's going to see you as an opportunity or whatever, and you just got to have to stay away from that. And I know maybe that's not fair in life, but you're kind of having to accept that if you're going to be basically famous. You're going to have to accept the fact that you're not going to be able to do social things in the public that other people can do simply because of that. That makes sense. And
it makes perfect sense. But it's like I can hear people saying okay, boomer. I'm probably the youngest boomer to ever exist in the world right now. But it's it's the same concept. You have to watch where you do, what people see you do, where people see you at, the people who people see you around. is going to have an impact on your life. And it's the same. It's not even not just for famous people, chat. Even everyday regular people. Anything that has your name attached to it is going to have an effect on your future. Even if you work retail, for God's sakes, if you work hard and you try to do your very best, then when you go to a new job where you're going to try to move up in the world, people are going to call your previous employer and be like, how were they as an employee? And they'll have good things to say about you. If you screw around and you're not paying attention and you're doing God knows whatever because you just want to do it because it's fun, more than likely it's going to be harder for you down the line.
No, it is. And I think it's a difficult thing because, one, in the NFL and in other sports, the guys are very young. A lot of times you're dealing with guys that are in their early 20s. And
still very hormonal, honestly.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the things I did in my early 20s, I wouldn't probably do now. But with that being said, you get into scenarios where a lot of these athletes have come from inner cities. And so their friends or the people they grew up with, they're still in that, they're still living in the inner cities, and that's their friends. And so I think it'd be hard, if you think back to maybe your childhood friends.
Saying goodbye to them was heartbreaking.
Right. And so you think about that, and if you're a high-profile athlete now and you want to go see them and go home, but they're still, they're hanging around places where there's drugs being dealt, there's gangs, and you're now in a situation where you don't really want to get around that because of now you're famous and everybody realizes that.
And in your head, it's like, oh, now you're too good for us. It's very, so very hard.
From your friends, yeah. I totally get that it's not easy, and I know with Xavier Howard, I read that his fiance flipped out because he bought a purse and it wasn't for her.
Oh, he bought the purse? I thought it was that she came home with a purse and he didn't like it.
No. What I had read is he bought the purse. She saw the purse and it wasn't for her, and she freaked out. So I kind of took it as she went at him and he grabbed her and gave her a shove, and then she flew into a mirror. That's kind of why I'm kind of saying this isn't just like Xavier Howard coming home drunk and beating his fiance. There was a fight going on between them with it, and so as a football player, we're talking about that age, you don't probably even realize how powerful you are. But again, I'm looking at it like you're in a situation that you just got to avoid that stuff if you're Xavier. Maybe you just walk away immediately and leave, or if your relationship's having that kind of drama going on, if you're going to be a high-profile player, you just got to get away from that. And I think that's where you hear that thing from people that are famous that say it's very lonely, because you got to stay away from so many things that maybe the average person can do or be a little more risky about it.
A lot of fans, not a lot of friends.
A lot of fans, not a lot of friends, yeah. But anyway, we're kind of off on a philosophical tangent, but that's kind of where I fall. I was kind of that way before Xavier Howard because everybody was saying cut him, and I'm like, he hasn't even been charged with anything yet. Nobody really knows what happened, and I'm just going off the call and the police report. I didn't hear anything about him actually physically punching her, hurting her, beating her on the ground, anything that's grotesquely terrible. And so without knowing what the conflict was about, I kind of look at that's his private business. I have a really close eye on him now. I would not expect him to be having any more calls for domestic disturbances or maybe seeing counseling or whatever he needs to do to work on that issue. But I don't think he needs to be, put out there and thrown in with guys that have done a lot worse. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is life lessons with Lewis and Chad. It's good. It's good, man. It's good. Seriously, it's good, man. You gotta be able to teach the younger,
we can always
my
talk
generation.
To the players with Herm Edwards, right?
Yeah. Don't hit sand. Don't hit sand.
You know what? But that was news. I mean, that was good to hear because that told me that the chances of Xavier Howard being suspended for a long time are probably not likely. So that helps us know, when we come into free agency in the draft, it would, for all intents and purposes, appear that we're going to have Xavier Howard back with us. The other news, I don't know if you saw this, Lewis, was Godshaw. There's been reports going around they're getting ready to extend his contract.
Works for me.
I think he's on the last year coming in of his rookie deal coming up here. And there's been some talk about extending him because I have never met, I don't know if you've ever met him personally, Lewis.
Godshaw? Yeah, he's a great guy.
That's what I'm hearing is he's a really, really good guy. And this is the kind of guy that Flores wants on the team. he may
I
not
mean,
ever be.
he was the Dolphins nominee for the Walter Payton Award this year. So
Yeah, there you go. And so that's the kind of players they want. And the thing that where I was going to mention that with is what we're finally seeing that we didn't have prior during the Ireland years and the Tannenbaum years is instead of maxing out the cap, we are signing guys early. We signed Xavier Howard early. We signed Jakeem Grant early. And basically what you're doing is you're saying, all right, we can either write a player out and get the full benefit of his rookie contract, what is exactly what the Cowboys did with Dak Prescott, or
and what we did with Jarvis Landry.
What we did with Jarvis Landry, or you can look at it and say, I'm going to maybe pay him just a little bit below that where he would be on the open market today. And so you go to a guy like Xavier Howard and you say, all right, right now you're due to make. He was like a second round pick, so he's probably due to make maybe $1 million or $850,000. And say, look, you're coming up in your final year here. You're going to make just $850,000, and this is a really dangerous sport. You could have Tua's injury, for example, and if that happens, nobody's going to give you any contract until you're healthy again. Why don't instead of you doing that, we'll give you a $45 million deal, which is like maybe the third highest paid cornerback in the league right now, and you are now guaranteed for life. You're getting that $25-30 million guaranteed, and that becomes almost a no-brainer for the player. But then when you get into free agency, now you got Xavier Howard, and yeah, he's a high-paid corner, but when those guys hit the market, they set the market. That's what you realize is, if Xavier Howard had hit the market this year without a contract, he'd probably become the highest paid cornerback in the league because he's simply the best corner on the market then, and whoever has the money is just going to pay him because they immediately get a Pro Bowl player for buying him. And so how many times have we seen the Dolphins do that, Lewis, where they ran the full contracts out, and a lot of the reason is because we were chasing free agents and we had our cap. We were always trying to, especially after we did that Ndamukong Suh deal, where we were always trying to figure out creative ways to try to.
Let's be real though, we wanted that deal. We wanted him.
I wanted Suh, but that's why you get the Tannehill contract where you're extending him and giving him more money and spreading it out to try to free up money to get somebody else. And it's almost like you're paying off debts with credit cards and you just can't get anywhere because you're always strapped for cap space. And so your best way to handle that is to say, well, we won't pay our guy because we have him. We're not going to pay Xavier Howard because we can get by with paying him for $850,000 and make him under the cap. But then he becomes a free agent after that. And so I'm just noticing the trend that our current manager with Chris Greer, they're paying the players they want early now instead of waiting until their contracts are up.
If I'm Miami, I do Godchaw. I get Baker now while he's still he's already going to be good. We know that. He's not going to be superstar level, but he's going to be pretty darn good.
Well, I think it's part of the collective bargaining agreement. I don't think you can before a certain time. So I think you can.
Baker only came 1 year after Raekwon, no?
Yeah, and Baker, he was not a first-round pick, so he's going to have 4 years. So if this is his third year, you can start negotiating with him. I think it is.
Yeah, it's his third year because Baker was a rookie the year before in 2018 with Frank Gore was here, and then 2019. So yeah, this is Baker's third year. I'm extending him now, honestly, and Raekwon too.
If it's legal, I'm okay with extending Baker right now. Obviously it depends on what their expectations are, but absolutely. I
think the less they've done, the lower their expectations are.
Well, yeah, and it depends. Like on a guy like Baker, you're not going to be paying him crazy money. You're going to be, paying him, what a solid young linebacker is worth. And so even if he ends up getting hurt and you've already paid him that money, he's not a cap killer if you lose him. So I'm completely fine with that.
And I'm signing Raekwon too. He's the run stuffer extraordinaire we've been needing.
Yeah.
Listen, man, when he got hurt, running back suddenly started running roughshod over us.
I'm not taking anything away from his season. It's just the only good one he's had so far, and I'd like to see him do one more before I give him a big contract. To me, Baker's got one more year on Raekwon of production right now. But
production, yes, but we know why though.
Yeah. It has a lot to do with coaching, but it's going to be interesting right now. And I think that might be a guy they look at the draft right now. Miami has a lot of interesting linebackers.
Beagle.
You have the guy. Yeah, he's a free agent. I think they got to get him
Restricted.
signed, restricted one, but they got to get him an offer sheet at least.
Yeah, they're gonna.
You have the
But he's
guy
still
they
cheap, so
got
it's not
from
worried about that.
Wisconsin. Is it Van Ginkel?
Andrew Van Ginkel's a rookie from last year.
Yeah.
So,
So he'll be returning as a linebacker. And so they've got some interesting players, in the mix right now. But
and that's the other thing to think about. We're not gonna have time for this show, but it's like there are still players on this roster that you really don't want to get rid of because you kind of want to see what happens.
well, you get rid of people when their contracts are up, and if they're not a fit or they're not where you want them, you don't want to pay them their second contract, and that's why Kenny Drake is gone. It wasn't because I think that the coaches didn't like Kenny Drake; he just wasn't being utilized like they want. He wasn't a fit for whatever they were trying to do. I guess he never was a fit for what anybody was trying to do here in Miami. But
he did exactly what we wanted him to do in Arizona.
yeah, I always liked Kenny Drake, but I understood when they got rid of him that they were at the point where if they did not trade him, when they did, he's
going to go for nothing. Yeah,
because he was getting tired of getting 5 carries a game, and that was it. He wanted to be a centerpiece in an offense, and he was leaving. So to me, that's the way you handle this. If you get a player that's in the last year, coming into the last year, and you either look at trading them or you extend them. I don't like letting players play that last year because then they leave and you get nothing in return other than maybe comp picks. And you see how that works, like with
the Jawan James. Yeah, that was a bust.
Hurt,
so much for that third rounder.
Yeah, that's probably like a 5th rounder now. I don't know what it became or what it is, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of the comp picks versus just getting the trade done. One real quick thing, unless you want to leave this for next week, Lewis.
No, what you got?
This is something that's I think it's interesting right now is that there's teams right now that are in cap trouble that have players they want to unload.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. Let's save that for next week. Yeah, because
Okay.
I wanted to have a good long discussion about that one. But the Tua and the draft stuff
it's not going to
sucked it
change
all
this
up.
week. So
Yeah.
sure, we can save it.
But it does have something to do with Todd Gurley / David Johnson / running backs in general. So we'll go with that.
Yes.
So that little teaser for next week. So
sounds good.
Thank you all so much for joining us. So this has been another episode of the Dolphins Brawl. So we're having a great time with this so far, and the Brawl Network's moving up to do some big things. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you all next time for another episode coming up soon. And have a good night to you.